welcome back to Preparing for the Unexpected. Today we are talking with Dr. Gavriel Schneider about his new book release, Presilience. Gav, great first and second segments there. I did want to ask something that we actually spoke about a few years ago, and you talked about living in a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguity. Well, you've added a D to that now and call it a VUCAD world. What are you talking about with this D?
So realistically, the world keeps changing, as we've discussed in earlier segments. VUCA as a term was coined in the late 1980s, but as we started looking at what are we actually doing in applying presilience in organizations, how does it work in the modern world? And this was just before the Gen AI sort of explosion. But more and more, we've realized that part of the challenge we've got is if you're not leveraging digital enablement, you are getting left behind. And it's not oh, I don't like that, I'm going to find another way to do it. We have now really, truly transcended into a digital operating economy as the primary way we operate. So we can't look to only develop presilience in a physical world and go, well, that's great when you're in the office, but when you're working virtually, the presilience vanishes. That's not real. So realistically, what we wanted to do was go, if you apply the right balance of compliance, resilience, and presilience, it should enable you to achieve those two primary objectives, making sure we maintain and sustain high performance during BAU and thrive through disruption. We can only really do that through digital enablement as part of the package. So we really wanted to make sure that this was something that was highlighted. We've also now got an operating rhythm where after every training program we run or every consulting project we run, we do a little review and debrief. We go, what's working and what's not. And the fact that there was not a big enough focus on digitization was something that got brought up quite a bit. And as such, in our last review, it became VUCAD.
Oh, okay, great. Well, now I'm going to ask you something else you talk about in your book. You talk about whole of the person model, WoPM. What are you describing here?
Excellent. So practically, if you think about yourself as a living organism, we spend most of our time in one of three domains. We're at home, at work, or online. Okay, obviously, there's our personal time where we might be doing other things. But what's really important is if we're talking about core skills that enable us to thrive, and we accept the fact that you are the same person when you're at work as you are at home. You fundamentally don't change your mental mindset just because you step into one or the other environment. You are who you are. You might have developed different personas to cope in different environments. That's a different discussion. But practically, we need to make sure that if we develop great skills, they work at home, online, and at work. So we need to move away from this idea that let's take something as simple as cyber safety. We don't want people to only have the right cyber practices when they're at work. We also want to make sure they don't click on the wrong links at home. If we take physical safety, we don't want people to be so careful and cautious at work to make sure nobody gets hurt, but then they go home and do stupid stuff, and then they can't come back to work. So the whole of person model is a critical input for ensuring we can achieve those two objectives. Because in the world we're in, think about it. I know it's late at night for you and you're still working, you're interviewing me. It's early in the morning for me. We technically would both probably be out of work hours. Yeah, but we're still working in a digital environment. So if we can't manage ourselves, what's the likelihood of us being able to have sustainable high performance? Pretty low. So that's whole of person model is a critical input into the Presilience approach.
Is there a challenge? Because you had a great example there of people working from home, people working in the office. A lot of people, and you probably know some of these people, I know them, that say, I'll do whatever I want at home. You can't tell me what to do. So how do you deal with that to try and bring all that together when someone is at home and they may be following all the rules, but their mindset is, don't tell me what to do when I'm at home.
Love it. Thank you. And we've gone back to mindset, but it's true. The mindset piece is the fundamental driver. So if we look at this whole, and you've picked the work from home thing, it's a nice example. So let's run with it. If we look at the whole idea of work from home, work from anywhere, it has to do with trust, right? If I trust you that you will do the work you're supposed to do, why should I care where you do it as long as it's safe and secure? Right. So the challenge we've got is once we have a compliance mindset, we tend to squash people into a box that tells them they have to operate a certain way, which in many cases makes them feel untrusted, unvalued, and like they are not creating, which drives human performance down. So once we understand a bit of psych, we can then start looking, and I do go into quite a bit of this in the book, because motivation is critically important. If we can't get the right motivational mix between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, we then don't get high performance. So this is part of the shifting world we're working in. For somebody to be a great work from anywhere, work from home worker, they have to believe in what the company does. They have to understand the processes. They have to understand why that organization might use some risk controls. So, for example, they need to understand why they might have to fill in a safety report every now and again, or why they might have to, still apply certain cybersecurity measures, even though they are working from home. So part of the challenge I see is there's this massive disjoint in a lot of places between what the worker wants, what their boss wants, and what the organization wants. And then you overlay that with what governments want, and it becomes 4 different competing objectives. So the role of the leader in the future to create presilience is alignment. But to achieve that, it has to start with the individual. So if I'm the person shirking at home as opposed to working from home, right, I'm actually the one who's dropping the ball. So the fact that I'm feeling, you don't trust me, you're not letting me get on with stuff, it's because I'm not behaving in a trustworthy way. So this is the interesting piece. We've for too long had an imbalance. We've either blamed the organization and we've gone, you treat your people terribly, you don't trust your people, or we've blamed the individual. You don't step up, you're not doing the right amount of work, etc. I'd say let's grow up. Let's move away from this blame thing and let's look at what are the tools and the motivational pieces we can use to get a better operating context. So that's really the drive in this idea of trying to make sure we can apply a more rounded practice that has better results.
I like what you said there. You're feeling not valued by the organization. You don't feel trusted. You start making mistakes because, well, if they don't care about me, I don't care about them. Then you end up with HR or somebody saying, well, because now you're making all these mistakes, we need to bring you back into the office. And now that's where you don't want to go, because when you're at home, you were fine. But now they made you feel bad, and now you get stuck in this cycle.
100%. Can I insert a little example there that I think is a nice one that helps explain some of how this breaks? So a lot of companies, to manage the work from anywhere, work from home thing, implemented things like key loggers or system trackers for people's systems when they're working to see how many strokes they're typing, how long they're on their computer, etc., etc. Along with that, most organizations then ramped up their phishing campaigns to try and make sure that people working from home, weren't making mistakes and making making decisions that create significant vulnerability. So part of the problem with that is if you look at that research that was done, great idea, right? If we can have a phishing campaign, we can test you. We can test you with low consequence. The problem that they found is most of the people clicking on those links were actually the highest performers, because they are so busy, they're dealing with hundreds of emails every day, and they don't have time to actually dig into depth. So what started happening is the best people in the business were getting punished. They were being told you have to go and do more cyber training. They're being told if you keep doing this, we can't trust you because you keep clicking on these dodgy links. And this idea of being cyber safe and cyber secure started to erode culture instead of build culture.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting example, and that's just one. I'm sure between the two of us, we've probably got thousands.
Oh yeah, I had a client who had that campaign going on, and one of their third parties that they dealt with all the time was sending emails with links and things like that, but it looked like phishing. It met the exact same criteria they said. So I kept reporting this vendor's emails as phishing, and they came back and said, "Why do you keep reporting this? This is valid." And I said, "Well, since when?" I said, "If it meets all the criteria, so it's phishing." "Oh yeah, but they're trusted." And I said, "Well, then send me the email where you said I can click on links from this vendor. Where is that? Because you didn't do that. And I wasn't the only one doing it." So, too many of them came through. After a while, we just started deleting everything.
So
And
to your point, it starts becoming risk theater now, because the control itself is not working the way it was intended. So people work around the control, ignore the control, because it doesn't enable performance. So
Right.
this is also the other interesting piece that Stactical has to start to address is we are so siloed, and I'll give you a couple of examples just based on your story. We're so siloed in the way we think that that cybersecurity team had a mission, right? And their mission was to make sure, there's no breaches, no hacks, and you have a safe virtual operating environment. What they didn't realize is actually, no, their mission is to ensure the people working in that environment have a safe environment to operate in. So if you make them feel unsafe and untrusted, you've actually destroyed the mission.
Yeah.
So one of the things I think we have to be doing, and I'm hoping this will start to come across in the book, is we need to change the way we think and communicate about these things. Because realistically, if we anchor down on that compliance, solo-driven mission, or my team is more important than your team, we then just hurt the organization, which in turn ultimately makes our societies weaker. There we have less motivated people, we have people earning less money, we have less job security, and ultimately people perform less effectively and are less happy and less fulfilled. So none of us want that. We want thriving, happy humans doing cool stuff.
Yeah. I run into that issue with cyber teams all the time. They show we have this great plan, blah blah blah. And so look, first thing I do, I not the only thing, but the first thing is, so where's ITDR in this disaster recovery? Right off the bat. Oh well, that's something different. That's not us. I'm going. So you wouldn't use them? You wouldn't use crisis management? Well, we use our own process. I'm going. Wait a minute. You're recreating processes that are already familiar with people who are already assigned and trained, and you're not going to leverage that for a cyber event? You want to rethink that?
And to your point, it's easy to pick on cyber because they're the newest kid on the block
Yeah.
when it comes to,
Yeah.
frontline
No
risk
offense.
management.
No offense.
No, 100%. But we see this in safety, we see this in physical security, we see this in fraud prevention, we see this in privacy. So your example could be relevant any of those risk-based vocations across an organization. I think the harder part with that is we've got to get our leaders to understand that the consequences to creating environments where there's low trust are quite significant. The consequences to driving environments where people don't feel that there's the opportunity to innovate and adapt and don't believe in what the organization does hurts you more in the medium term than the long term. And one of the things we've got to get organizations to realize is time has changed. And this is a very interesting point. This is a whole episode in its own right. We'll try and do it in less than a minute. The challenge we've had is we've worked in these planning cycles. So if you do a strategic plan, we tend to say that's a 3 to 5 year plan. You do a tactical action plan, we're saying that's something you're going to do now. But very rarely do these things intersect. The challenge we've got is risk itself is not linear. We don't control the time that a risk takes to manifest usually. And if we did control it, then it's our failure for not managing it. So it's a much lower level risk if we have that level of control. So practically, the thing we've got to get good at is making decisions in the right time. That's the important piece. And sometimes we see political leaders fail at this terribly because they failed to make the right decision or the right announcement in the right time, where they actually had a small window and they had to act. Okay, as you know from the crisis side of it, we've got to get in front of the crisis. But then you look at the other side where people make snap decisions, but they actually had time to gather more information and get the facts, which is also a failure in decision making. So to be an expert at this Presilience idea actually means we need to understand timing, positioning, distancing, and all those other variables that impact good decisions and create performance lags.
Gav, congratulations on the book once again, Presilience. It comes out April 1st, and depending on when people are listening or viewing this, go get your copy. I'm sure it's available on a lot of the major bookseller sites, right?
Will be definitely after the retail release date. Can be ordered in advance now from the publisher site, which is Amplify Publishers. Equally, if you love the idea of what we're talking about, feel free to check out our training too, because that's running regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And if nothing else, just start to entertain the idea, because where great things start is a small shift in thinking. And if you can start in your own mind to separate when I'm doing compliance versus resilience versus resilience type thinking, you can start to shift your own mindset to high performance, which is a wonderful way to make this happen.
And a wonderful way to end the show. Gav, thank you so much, and congratulations once again. Great chatting with you, and I'm sure we'll be chatting again.
Thanks, Alex, and thank you to all your listeners.
Everyone watching and listening, stay prepared, everybody. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe, and in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.